Great. Thank you. Welcome everyone to our fourth Community Advisory Meeting. I'll call this meeting of the Waco ISD Board of Trustees officially to order. We do have a quorum present tonight, and I'm excited to hear what we have on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Kincannon.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to meeting number 4. We're excited that you all could be here this evening. We do have a lot of information to share. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about Waco High School this evening and school costs. So I don't want to take too much time with the introduction, but I do, before I pass it over to our architect, Jared Sturzinger, I do want to mention that we want to give a brief update on the winter storm, and our staff will do that. But before we do, I'm going to let Jared Sturzinger with O'Connell Robertson talk first and do the introduction. Jared?
So good evening. Can you hear me?
Amy?
Yes.
This is Amy. I'm a poor substitute for Jared, but I'm here standing in for Jared today. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you've recovered from that crazy winter weather we experienced. On behalf of our entire design team, we're glad to be with you tonight and picking up our work on the long-range facility planning for Waco ISD. Thank you, Dr. Kincannon, for the introduction, and I'll give you guys a quick overview of tonight's program. We do have a lot to cover, as you might expect. And as Dr. Kincannon mentioned, we're going to be focused quite a bit on Waco High School options tonight. Some of the information we're sharing is a carryover from the last meeting that we didn't really have a chance to discuss. So we'll be managing our time and our conversations closely tonight. As you can see here, we are on our 4th meeting. And here's the agenda for the evening. So we'll have a winter storm impact update from the district from Kevin in just a second. And then we're going to have facility first cost conversation. So Doug's going to share some information about building costs. Then we're going to share a couple of project case studies. And then Casey and Dina from Waco ISD are going to talk about kind of the lens with which you might look at a high school campus. We'll talk about some options, and then we're going to have breakout sessions and give everybody a chance to provide some input. So I think with that, again, welcome. Glad you're here. We really appreciate you being with us and know it's been a really hectic couple of weeks. But I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now to talk about the impact on facilities that this winter weather event had. Kevin?
All right. So first of all, I'd like to say good evening to everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of address everything that went on. Kind of want to share with you the state of the buildings and the systems within the district that were affected by the recent storms. On a macro scale, I would say almost every single one of our buildings was impacted in one way or another. Some were relatively minor, some were major. There were definitely a struggle for our department to identify the damages, mitigate those damages, repair failures, and return everything to service within a really short window of opportunity. I'm so thankful to our staff, our maintenance staff, their level of dedication and understanding of the importance of returning to service by Monday the 22nd. They really got in there and knocked everything out. So we're really blessed to have such a great staff. Before we really get into photos, and I'll kind of describe some of the major damages, I just wanted to make a couple observations. So our newer buildings, they're constructed using modern materials and modern construction standards. They actually seem to fare pretty well. Most of the issues that required repair for return to a service, they were isolated to utility failures. So they were caused by a loss of electricity, a loss of water service. The components required to make these repairs in the newer buildings, they're relatively easy to find. They mostly occurred due to the systems trying to protect themselves and shutting down. They sacrificed easily replaceable parts and provided protection to the systems overall as a whole. In contrast, our older buildings really they sustained the heaviest damage, mostly due to systems that were exposed to harsh conditions. We had a lot of burst pipes that were uninsulated, penetrations through outside walls that didn't have kind of the modern sealant systems that you find in newer construction, equipment that didn't have robust safety features that would kind of shut themselves down or sacrifice easily replaceable parts. So these items really kind of contributed to the damage by the equipment and infrastructure within these older buildings. That being said, I'd like for you to kind of keep that in mind as we go through the discussions about what we're going to do with our facilities. So I'd like to start first with, looks like Waco High is our first slide. So the pictures that you're seeing there, the first one is well, let me get into the overall. So we had significant damage there at Waco High in multiple locations, and it's primarily due to exposed and aged equipment. The PAC received very heavy flooding damage, particularly in the auditorium and the surrounding hallways and classrooms, due to a rupture of the fire sprinkler system, components in the fire sprinkler system. As well, the HVAC equipment that's housed outside of the science wing, it suffered heavy damage due to exposure to the elements. We had some cracked pump housings. We had some boiler housings that were cracked, and so those things can no longer hold water when they're cracked. The hot water loop that serves the boilers for the main body of the building suffered some pretty significant piping ruptures in multiple areas, just due to age of those systems and really exposure. The first picture you see on the left, that is the hot water loop. So you can see the piping that's in there. You can see the insulation that's around it, that hot water loop. You can see there's a lot of corrosion in there. That is one of the main areas, and we have multiple areas that were like that. That kind of kept those boilers from coming on. It's just kind of ruptured and leaking water. The photo to the right with the circles around the couplers that are in there, those are repairs that we had to make, kind of the same issue. Those weren't exposed to outside elements, but they were contained in a mechanical building that isn't heated or insulated. Just you can see it's just CMU building. And the last photo on the right, that's a pump housing that pushes the hot water through that loop. You can see at the bottom, it's cracked, and so that's leaking water. Next slide, please. So you can see, I'll get kind of to the picture on the right. So you can see the water that's standing there in the hallway. This was in multiple areas throughout the building due to that ruptured pipe, the sprinkler piping. Let's move on to the next campus. So this is Carver. So at Carver, the main was in exterior piping, making a penetration. We had a water line ruptured. That flooded the gym. You can see the photos there of the gym floor. You can also see standing water there in our hallways, in the locker room areas. And you'll see a photo there of some wet ceiling tiles. So that's where we had kind of complications from ice and snow that's sitting on the roof. So the next campus, I think, is going to be Alta Vista. So Alta Vista was really heartbreaking for us. We had, again, outside water penetration coming into the building on an outside wall. That line ruptured. When it did that, it flooded the library. You can see the water standing there, the picture at the top right. It flooded several classrooms, 5 classrooms. And then the back hallway, probably the worst photo in the illustrative photo is the one at the bottom left. If you look really close, you can kind of see water pouring outside of that foundation. That was due to all the water that infiltrated that building due to that ruptured pipe. So those are kind of our main damages, and so I really appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to share those with you this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to just say thank you again to our facilities and maintenance team. They did a fantastic job. And we did have a good amount of damage, but it certainly could have been worse under the extreme temperatures that we experienced. So thank you. All right, Amy, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. What a great opportunity to get that firsthand update for the community from Kevin and the district. Really appreciate that. And clearly the team's been hard at work, but obviously has a great program ongoing to keep those facilities in good shape. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who's going to talk to us about facility costs and building costs a little bit. And I think Doug and Casey may jump in as needed here as well. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. And so really what we're going to do is look at total project cost this evening, and I'll explain a little bit about what that is. But you'll see here on this slide, we've broken it out into 4 different categories. So really this is just a whole kind of collection of what goes into a project. And so you'll see at the top there, we broke it out into site costs, hard costs, and soft costs. And so when we think about a project and what goes into everything, we take all these different categories into consideration. And so that's when we combine all those together, that's what we call total project costs. So when we're looking at the costs for Waco High School, for example, in some of the subsequent slides, we're going to be talking about total project costs. And so that'll include things like, title, closing, geotechnical survey, demolition, that you'll see there over on under site costs. Hard costs, which is what you would is the visual, very easily understandable cost, which is your building, your foundations, your steel, your exterior walls, and your windows and everything. That's your hard costs, what make up the building. And then the soft costs are the remaining elements. So your furniture, chairs, desks, equipment that you put inside, as well as technology, and then also the development and design costs associated with that. Topographical surveys, testing, materials, moving from an old building into a new building, all that's captured under soft costs. And so if we go to the next slide, here is a good example of how we really do dive into the details of what is the percentage as we look at the CSI master spec breakdown of these different divisions. So these are all different divisions of what actually constructs a building. So all these different divisions have lots of different products, and they get specified, and you'll see there the breakdown is the percentage of each of those different categories. So we really do, we can break this down as at each project level very specifically to see exactly what that building cost is going to be. And so on the next slide here, you'll see as well, we do also track historically and regionally what high schools historically do and have costed in the past. And so this is just a chart showing that growth over the past several decades. And so the next 3 slides here, just going to go over really briefly what varying budgets are and how they're made up. So for example, here we're going to start in what we'll call the higher budget. And so a lot of things that you see with these higher budget high school facilities are, turf competition and practice fields, the higher performance roofing systems, really taking the opportunity to maximize daylight and do some more unique things to really bring daylight into the campus. You'll see higher performing finishes such as polished concrete or terrazzo, LVT. The HVAC, the mechanical systems are often a little bit more expensive, but they're higher performing, they're more efficient, such as a chilled water system. Plumbing systems, not going with the super cheap pipe, but going with a more durable, cast iron plumbing. Electrical, LED lighting is becoming pretty much a standard now across the board, and that does cost more, but we have seen LEDs come down quite a bit in the building industry. Landscape and outdoor is another good cost driver. Higher budgets typically incorporate a greater amount of landscape, and you'll see just some images there and examples at the bottom. If you want to go to the next slide, we can take a look at the medium budget. And so here, you'll see a couple differences. Maybe only the competition field is turf and the rest of them are natural practice fields. That is a big cost factor in a lot of high schools. Roofing systems, sometimes you'll see going from a built-up roof to a single ply roof is something that, becomes a little more cost effective there. Focusing your daylight strategies and not having, larger expanses of glass. Your HVAC systems, switching from a chilled water to something different like a DX system. And so you can think of, as you're thinking of projects, and you'll see here in a little bit, Westwood High School is an example of that, as well as University High School as an example of buildings that incorporate some of these different components. And then there's also here on the slide the lower budget, and so this would be all natural athletic fields, going with a more budget-friendly roofing system such as TPO or other single ply, waxable floor finishes like VCT, or sealed concrete, something that's a little bit more easily constructed. Plumbing using CPVC as much as possible, and HVAC systems, typically you see small package DX systems on these lower budget type campuses. And so looking at that, this Salado High School, which some of y'all may be familiar with, is a very efficient design and incorporates some of these cost saving strategies.
Yep. So Doug, we've got a few questions percolating in the chat, and then I did want to highlight that any estimates or numbers you see tonight, we're going with the mid-range cost, just making an assumption for now. We'll obviously have to continue discussions with the district about what's right about that or wrong, what way we want to sway. But any numbers you see tonight, we're picking middle of the road. We had a question come across in the first one I saw is with recent significant increases in construction costs, are those being counted for in the estimates? Yes, right now they're part of the contingency. We've been seeing a lot of variability across the different construction industries. Some are high, then they dip low, and vice versa. And so currently we're holding forth with these in the contingency, but when a project gets real, as in the bond passes and we're planning for it, then we'll get more real-time estimates from the contractors, because 6 months from now, things that are low right now might be high and vice versa. And so then we would use the current numbers in the estimate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. And so as she mentioned, we're going to be looking at these costs, assuming the mid-range level budget. And so, were there any other questions in there, Casey? I'm sorry, I didn't have the chat.
No, that's fine. The other one is, what is DX? You want to tackle that one?
So there's a couple different types of mechanical systems, and basically a chilled water system, which was noted on the higher budget, uses like a central plant, which would be a central mechanical space to distribute. And DX, and Jared, you may be able to chime in and help me out here. But it's yeah, thank you, Amelia. It's basically an individual unit for the spaces served, and so you have a number of these. And on a high school, you could have anywhere from 50 to 100 or even more, depending on how big your campus is. But it's a more cost-effective mechanical solution.
Yeah, and then another question that we had come across is, does the land cost assume that there will be a location change? Great question. We are going to come up with a couple different options here to be discussed, and you can always come up with more. So in any of the scenarios that suggest a land change, that cost is assumed with that. Absolutely.
And to be clear, that slide before, it was just showing kind of a typical condition. So assuming you were purchasing, a new site and building on it, that site cost incorporates the land cost there. So it's not to say that that necessarily applies to Waco High School, for example, but it was just more as a general kind of here's what falls into those categories. And Dr. Kincannon, I saw your question there. We are also including inflation, so we're assuming construction costs and using an inflation number as well, to make sure we're tracking with how costs have risen historically.
Great.
Great questions. Thank you.
In the interest of time, we'll keep moving along and then we'll circle back at the end of the meeting or parking lot some of these additional questions. And so Doug, I think I have the next, oh no, Amy's got the next one.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Doug. So next up, we're going to share some information on 3 projects that parallel the high school options that we've been discussing about Waco High and that we're discussing tonight. And these are just to provide you some relevant context or case studies, if you will. So, they're just to give you some background information and foundation. These projects represent some experience that O'Connell Robertson has had, including work with Dr. Kincannon. So the first one we want to talk about is Lake Belton High School. And this project was a new comprehensive 9th through 12th grade campus on a greenfield site. So this design process involved a group of stakeholders comprised of district staff, and it involved a significant discussion early in design around programs offered at the existing high school and then this new high school in order to determine what would be best for the overall district and all high school students. It also offered the opportunity for new kinds of teaching and learning spaces by being a whole new campus. And you will see from other examples presented, there's an ease of design planning and construction when you are on a green site that can create a faster and a smoother construction process. So you see here some images of this facility. It was almost 400,000 square feet. It was on 80 acres, so lots of room to spread out, as you can see from the site plan on, I think it's on your right, or is it on your left? It's on my right in view.
On the right, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. So you can see how much room there was to spread out on 80 acres. It also was a single phase. So this whole campus was built with the funds from one bond election. And the design took 15 months. It's a very large facility, and construction took 24 months. So you can go to the next slide. And I think is there something else? Yeah, there's some other images. So what this campus had is a real focus on collaboration and flexibility within the learning spaces. It provided an opportunity for some additional and new CTE spaces in the district for high school students. It also offered the opportunity for varied size learning spaces since there weren't existing walls that had to be accommodated, right? It was a brand new facility. And then as you can see from this picture here, the big picture, some large flexible spaces for multi-use, which also offered a more flexible dining solution. So Dr. Kincannon, I don't know if you want to add anything on just overall comments about building on a new greenfield site or this project. Otherwise, I was going to move on to the next one.
Oh, I am just really proud of this building. There was a lot of input into the design of the facility, and I know you can't tell by this picture, but this is actually a smaller dining space than you might actually find in a high school that's built for 2,500 students. One of the innovative things that we did in this building was to disperse dining. So there are a couple of other places out in the classroom where there are meal service areas so that we begin to break down this big group traditional style setting cafeteria. And so it's a really fascinating building, and I'm hoping that that some of us at least can take a tour of it one day.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Angela, for supporting me on my abbreviations. CTE is Career in Technology. education. And the new facility allowed for just, any kind of opportunity for setting up some new programs in that area, again, because there weren't constraints. Let's go on to the next project. We're going to talk about a different type of situation, and that is a replacement facility. So this next campus is the Ann Richards School for Young Women in Austin. And this was a modernization project where we designed a replacement 6th through 12th grade campus for all girls on an existing active school site. So this project began as a potential renovation modernization, but shifted during early planning conversations to the need to design and build a whole new replacement school, mainly because the existing concrete block walls just weren't going to accommodate some of the new teaching and learning styles that were happening in the school. And if they had the opportunity, this new facility allowed us to tailor the educational environment to the unique curriculum and instructional methodology at the Ann Richards School. Early planning involved detailed conversations around phasing on the occupied site. So that was a key to the process. So there was master planning, and safety and security was a really high priority because of all the activity, as well as the impact on the surrounding neighborhood had to be considered. So the existing
I got in, but I can't get any audio out of this.
The existing campus was 126,000 square feet, and the new campus is pushing 200,000 square feet. So all of this occurred on the occupied site of, as you can see here on the slide, 14.6 acres or about 15 acres. You're going to see a better picture of that here. So if you look at the photo on the left, the image on the left of your slide, that was the existing campus, that kind of H-shaped building that's in the lower part of that site plan. The new building was designed here in the middle picture to just kind of nestle into part of that existing facility on the site. And then what will happen in the third image, you will see the old building will get demolished, and that is where the new track and field will go. And so, curriculum. There was an innovative library concept that was part of this campus. They have a very strong culture of making, so they have a lot of maker spaces within this building. And there was a strong focus on collaboration and flexibility. And if you want to see some construction phasing images, we can look at the next couple slides. You want to go ahead and advance. So here you can see, this is the new campus in the front of this image, but the old campus is in the, what would be the top. Here, the old campus is in the top left, kind of, again, nestled around. And then I think we have one more, maybe. There we go. Can you see? So here you can see again how close from this site plan, how close this building got inside this band hall here. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm timing myself, Doug. So this third option is a renovated facility. So this is another really interesting example. And this is Westwood High School in Round Rock ISD. And this was a comprehensive master planned phased improvement for a 350,000 square foot campus on 29 acres. And these 29 acres weren't adjoining. They were, a part of it was across the street from another part of the campus. When we started working on this project initially and developed a master plan, I believe the campus only had about 260,000 square feet. So we've had multiple additions on the campus, as well as renovated and touched basically every building by this time. The campus and building improvements addressed growth. They addressed equity across all the district high schools to get Westwood up to par with the others, and educational delivery. So some new spaces that accommodated innovative teaching programs and career and technology programs they had going on. This project is different in that it has involved 4 significant phases, with the 4th phase currently in construction, and multiple bond programs to fund these phases. So you can see here from this graphic on the screen, this project has basically been under construction for 15 years. Phase 1 and 2 rolled together fairly seamlessly between bond programs. And so the team kept working there, but there was a pause between phases 2 and 3 until another bond election was passed. And then there was a pause between phase 3 and 4, waiting on a bond to pass for that 4th phase. So there have been significant daily impacts across the years on this campus that involved everything from putting 400 more parking spots on the campus to get students out of the neighborhood from parking on the streets, to rerouting traffic twice during this phase for parent drop-off and buses, moving students into portables temporarily until they could move back onto the campus, and then coordinated construction work with the principal at a very, very high level. I might also add that there have been 3 different principals at this campus during this time of these multiple phases. And really the key to success here is communication and collaboration. It absolutely can be done. This is a very successful academic campus. And so there's a high priority on not impacting the learning for students. And so everything was really timed and coordinated around testing dates and other, spring break and winter break and summer break. There were major construction phasing efforts that would happen during that time period, and then bring the students back, and the cafeteria might be in a different place than it was before the holidays started. So a complex route for sure, but absolutely doable, and work that could go on and result in spaces like you see here, where on the top you can see the picture of an exterior corridor that then became enclosed to provide some common areas. This campus also has received a new central plant and complete HVAC and electrical upgrades throughout the process, has added fine arts spaces and athletic spaces and common areas, and has a very large library that is a central point for the whole campus. So a lot can be done under this methodology. So really, we wanted to present to you tonight these 3 different examples of how you might approach a major high school, innovation on an existing campus. So with that, I think, Casey, is this where you are going to jump in with Dina and talk about?
There are a couple of questions, Amy,
Okay.
you might want to answer.
Yeah, so I was starting to get to those. The first one I saw is Ann Richards. So Ann Richards, the core of the school opened up in December of 2020, and many of the students moved over, and students and faculty moved over in January, over that winter break. They're still wrapping up a few finishing touches inside the building. And now that all the students and teachers and faculty are in the new building, they're now going to begin the process of demolishing the old building and going back in and doing the other site improvements associated with it.
So basically it was just completed in January. The students moved in for the first time.
Yeah, and then there was a question for Westwood. It was related to, was there a plan in place for Westwood if any of the bond programs had not passed?
Sure. Well, I would say that the master plan is key to the subsequent phasing of a project. And so the initial master plan that was developed in 2008 was followed very closely until phase 4. And again, phase 4, we were on the 3rd principle since the initial master plan, and a few things had changed. But the master plan was additionally created to support ensuring that one phase can be completed and can be successful and provide value without the next phase potentially happening for a while. So I would say that was the plan, is to break up the master plan into phases that can kind of stand on their own if it stops there for a period of time, or that can just move right into the next phase. And truth be told, there was a failed bond in between phase 3 and phase 4. And so the district went back out and passed the bond, and phase 4 is now happening. So that would be kind of how you want to set up your master plan, is so that any phase can stand on its own and add value and bring a lot to the campus, and isn't contingent on the next phase happening. But of course, the next phase is going to provide a next level of value. So you have to prioritize your phases, and that's just part of the process. And I did see another question about cost, and if this option is more expensive. Well, as costs pretty much always are going to rise out into the future, it's more expensive because of that. And then complexity around phasing, can add cost.
I think on the Westwood campus, which I had the opportunity to tour, I wasn't a part of these projects, but I think because there was limited land from which to work, and there was so much work to be done, that phasing made sense because they were able to keep the campus open throughout the process.
Yep,
That's absolutely right.
that was a huge motivator there. Great. So if we could move on to the next section, if you want to advance the slide, Jessica. Thanks. And so I'm going to get us started here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dina in a minute. So this last section, before we get to the high school design options, sort of fun stuff, setting some additional framework here for you. And so when we consider design options or plan options, master plan, when we look at things long term, we want to look at a variety of things, everything from how does this impact or support our educational delivery pedagogy. We also want to talk about, we heard about for elementary schools, what's the difference between a small local school versus a larger district school, sort of both functionally and economically. And then you also talk about, what's the state of the facility? How old is it? Those types of elements. So the 8 lenses that we continue to use as the design team and with the executive committee, we're not going to go through all 8 of these with you. I mean, we don't have all night. I could entertain you if you want to stay extra. We're going to dive deeper, loosely into a few of these. So I'm going to turn in, if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to let Dina talk us through a few slides here, and then I'll come back. Oh, sorry, I lied. I'm going to do this one first. And so this is just a refresher. You're all from Waco and you're familiar with Waco. The 2 comprehensive high schools are Waco High School, shown here in the pink region, and then University High School, shown in the purple region. You also have quite a few supporting facilities. Besides Guaca and Guama, you also have Brazos and Wiley, and you've got a few other ancillary type campuses. And so we don't want to forget those. Waco and University are the largest, and that's what we'll be talking a lot about, but we do have some other supporting facilities. So we could go to the next slide. And Dina, do you want to talk to us a little bit about sort of goals in the district?
Sure. Okay, I want to take us back for just a second to our meeting. I think this might have been meeting 2.
Yes.
When we were talking about our skills that are needed for the workforce. And we looked at skills that were prioritized in 2015, and then how that list had changed in just 5 years. And so looking at complex problem solving, remember that was still on top, but critical thinking had moved up, as had creativity. And so something that was said a little bit ago, as we were presenting all of the different schools and different rebuilds or updates that had been made, I heard the word opportunity mentioned, and that they wanted to provide the opportunity for teachers and students to teach and learn in different ways, to meet our current needs. And I think that's the goal as we're looking at this, is we want to provide, our students with the best possible, and our teachers as well, so that they have the opportunity to engage in learning that will hopefully develop and lead to the skills that we have on the right. Go ahead. So during that presentation, I also showed you the learning pyramid. And what we talked about during that time was that we only retain about 5% of what we learn through lecture. And so we might think of that as a student sitting in a desk, a teacher in the front of the class, and teaching as students listen with some independent work. That's basically it. And so as we go down, we see at the bottom, at the 90% level, that students learn and retain more, and us as well, when we're able to teach others. And then 75% practice by doing and having discussion and demonstration. So we want to look and think about how our learning environments and our facilities can help our teachers teach in this way. So we also talked about some key attributes that we really want to focus on and develop in our students as they progress through school and then into graduation and the workforce. And so the ultimate goal is for our students to be creative problem solvers, as we saw in the other list. We want them to be skillful team members. So how do we work with others? How do we negotiate that situation? And use our critical thinking skills during those times. We want our students to be effective communicators and have opportunities to communicate in different ways to develop those skills. So whether it's technology or in groups, communicating with people in different places even. Ultimately, though, when we put all of these things together, we really want to develop students who are lifelong learners so that when they leave us, they are knowledgeable and understand how to not only consume information, but also produce information for others who need it. And then being able to discern when they're looking at, whether it's additional learning or looking at media, that they're able to discern what's good for them. What do they need to go forward and to improve their life and to help others? And so all of that starts with content knowledge, and then we stack these other skills on top of that to help them use that knowledge to then navigate their world. And then ultimately, of course, hopefully this leads to our students being informed citizens. Go ahead. So then, if producing students who are lifelong learners is our ultimate goal, then what do we need to do to develop that? So we're going to talk about very quickly 4 attributes of that. So the first one is ability to collaborate, and then secondly, ability to be self-directed, the ability to integrate critical thinking, and then an appreciation of creativity and imagination. Go ahead. So let's look first at the ability to collaborate with others and work with diverse teams in a variety of contexts. So what you see on the screen here on the left is a current picture of one of our classrooms at Waco High School. And then what you see on the right is a picture of a classroom from a school that is newer and more modern. And so as it says at the top, it says students learn in various ways. And we want to be able to meet their needs, which means that we're able to manipulate and create an environment to meet those needs. So sometimes students might be working alone, sometimes in groups, sometimes even in different places throughout the school building. And so replacing outdated learning environments that are geared toward stationary front-facing instruction. So when we were looking at that learning triangle, and we were talking about the lecture, just the sit and kind of receive information, being able to replace that with flexible learning spaces for students and teachers so that would provide the foundation necessary to educate students in multiple ways and increase mastery of content. One of the things, if you don't readily notice it in the picture on the right, that actually in the middle there's a wall, a dividing wall. And so that wall can be moved. And we have 2 classrooms there that could be opened up into one. And then we also see that wall is also a wall that can be used to display. It can be used to write things on. The furniture is movable. And so there's just many opportunities to do different things in this type of learning environment. as teachers design lessons. Okay. All right. Now we're going to think about the ability to be self-directed, and we want students to be able to apply content and knowledge in new and different ways. So as our students take in information, how do they apply that and make meaning of it? And so we want them to be able to have an opportunity to do that in multiple ways. And so a tech-enabled facility that includes versatile learning spaces across the campus will provide an opportunity for students to engage in robust learning experiences that are currently not available. So we talked a lot about, in different groups at various times over these meetings, about our libraries. We talked about having community meeting spaces and places where students can get together, for different purposes. And so on the left, you'll see a current library. Now, I will say we have some new furniture in there, which is definitely an upgrade. However, when we look at the picture on the right, this is a picture outside of a classroom. You see the classroom there in the background with those kind of glass windows. But there are opportunities for students to group and work together out in that kind of common area. You see the student that's there writing, composing something on the wall. Across the way, there are more students, and then there's a projector there from the ceiling, so that if students actually wanted to hook in a computer to that and project something on a wall as they worked through a presentation or plan to do who knows what, the sky's the limit. And so really, again, just offering the opportunity for teachers to design those innovative lessons and for our students to really engage in learning in a way that they just currently aren't able to do. Okay, one more. Okay, and then the ability to integrate critical thinking, problem solving, and information literacy skills. So our facilities that are equipped to support teaching and learning that prepare students to encounter more complex life and work experiences will provide opportunities for students to apply learning in more meaningful ways. When we think about this, this kind of feeds into many different spaces. So whether it's our CTE spaces, it could even be some of our extracurricular spaces. What you're looking at here actually on the left is a picture of a functional academics classroom, but it's the kitchen. And so the intent there would be to work with our students on life skills and learning how to use the kitchen and appliances and different things so that when they're in, at home or in the community, they're able to transfer those skills. And I'm told that actually that we don't use the appliances in the kitchen very much, and that we're really trying to integrate it more. But let's look at the picture on the right. What if we were able to offer an environment like that for our students to work in and for teachers to use to design these types of lessons? And so I think that's what we're thinking about. The spaces that are available, we want them to be innovating, but we also want them to inspire our students and inspire our teachers, which leads us to the last slide. Go ahead. So appreciation of creativity and imagination. So facilities that are designed to inspire would provide an effective foundation for teachers to cultivate and nurture students' creativity, imagination, and their unique talents. So this could be, when we're thinking about this, we're thinking about fine arts. We're thinking about, again, our extracurriculars. Even it could be our CTE spaces, but really spaces where students want to be. Not I have to go to school, but I want to go to school. I have this awesome, classroom or this kitchen or this whatever that I'm going to be able to go in and really apply what it is that I'm learning. And so here we have on the left a picture of a theater classroom, and then on the right, this is actually a picture from I saw it in one of the slides that we showed earlier from one of the campuses as they were redesigning a school. And so ultimately that's, I think that's the goal. We want our students to have the best and we want our teachers to have the best. And so thinking about what we can do to make that happen.
Great. So
All right.
Jessica, if you could go forward 2 slides. Yep. Thanks. And so Dina did an excellent, go back 1, please. Dina did a great job explaining one of the lenses, which is about curriculum and instruction. And then, we always want to keep that in the forefront because, we can modernize, we can update building systems all we want. But if we're not being able to deliver, the quality education that Waco ISD does deliver, we want to think critically about that. Another item I just wanted to get on your radar is we've talked about district demographics and growth and decline in the district. And so what you can see up in the top in the color coded is your district high schools and support high schools. That's your detention center, your challenge academy, your Wiley. And then in the gold bar, it's highlighting the current student enrollment. And then as it moves to the right of the screen, you can see each year sort of what's being predicted. And obviously the next couple of years, that's a little bit easier to predict, but then as you go out farther. What you're not seeing here is Waco and Guama. Those are high school support facilities, but those students are accounted for back in their assigned their parent high school. There's probably a better name for that, but their core high school. And so those students are accounted for in their core campuses. And so when we look at what the district is right now, and so we see in our snapshot for fall of 2020, we're at about 4,200 in the total between all the campuses. And we've actually got a built capacity of 5,000. And that was something we reviewed last meeting. If we have questions about this, we can come back to it. But essentially, we've got a little bit of extra space. So when we're talking about potentially renovating or replacing or doing something with the existing high schools, we have some room here. And so if we were to say, all right, Brazos stays at 200 capacity, we don't see that changing drastically over the next 10 plus years. If we take University High School and keep the exact same capacity, which you can see from the demographics, that supports that population. If we say, if we're going to do anything at Waco High School, we don't necessarily need to match their existing capacity of 2,400 and change. We could go down to 2,100. We can match essentially University High School. All right, and then the next slide here. And then also, just putting back on your radar, we talked a little bit about this in the past. Part of the prep work that the district did in preparation for this activity or for this long range facilities master plan is they looked critically, they hired a consultant and went into every single school and evaluated what is needed bare minimum over the next 10 plus years to keep this building operational. And they're considering a like for like replacement. So they're looking at, all right, so our interior doors, they're just not up to par, they're deteriorating, we need to update those. Our HVAC equipment, it's gonna hit the end of its useful life over the next little bit. And so they've categorized those into the buckets, low, medium, and high, and assigned some dollars with that, and then we escalated it out. And so the chart at the bottom, you can see project costs. And so if you were to do all of the things needed for Waco High School specifically for the next 13 years, just pick that horizon, that's when the useful life starts to deteriorate there, to do all of the things. And this is just to bring the building up to suitability. It does not address any of the educational or it does not support modern teaching environments. It doesn't add that level of transparency. It doesn't add that level of flexibility, et cetera. That's going to be $75 million to get Waco High School up to baseline over the next couple years. So it's a pretty big number to think about. And then if we could go to the next slide. And for those of us that aren't really into the numbers, it gets a little overwhelming. We've created just a very simple chart here. So along the bottom from left to right is facilities condition assessment. That's the cost related to how expensive it would be to address the age, the condition, the useful life of a building. That's replacing your windows. That's replacing your plumbing fixtures, your HVAC systems. So items over to the left, according to the chart here, are the needs of most concern, and items over to the right are on the better end of the spectrum. So obviously you can see University of High School is over here on the right. I mean, that's a newer facility. That makes sense. Check, we understand that. Over on the vertical column, that's the educational suitability assessment. Those are the things Dina talked a bit about, and that's, is the building supporting the educational environment? And so that's talking about flexibility of spaces, of furniture. That's talking about better lighting, controllable lighting, better acoustics. And so the things towards the bottom of the chart are not doing great in that regard, and things towards the top of the chart are doing better. And so if you look at that, what you see pops out is sort of Waco High School over to the middle left grid. And then you see University High School up to the top right. And then you see the other support facilities sort of balancing out in the middle. That's not to say any of those things don't need support, but what this is indicating to us is that Waco High School is in the most dire condition comparative to other Waco High School facilities. So then if we can go to the next slide. And now we've got a couple of different options to go over. Before we go over to the options, did we have any questions on sort of the lenses for consideration, the capacity, conditions assessment? It's a lot of things thrown at you.
I think it might be a good time for me to talk about the PTEC slide. I think we skipped over that one.
Yes, I didn't have any. Yes, we can talk about it. We can go back a slide. It's just a blank slide. We didn't have any notes to add in.
Okay, I just, it's an opportunity for me to keep going. There you go. Just to mention that today the district received notification that we received a PTEC planning grant from the state. And I wanted to explain what a PTEC school is and let you know that it's something we're just beginning. It wouldn't necessarily be a factor in this work that we're doing today, but it may be something that impacts us for the future. So back in 2019 in December, we had a design thinking session with community partners and teachers and district personnel. And we were working on teacher retention concerns within Waco ISD. And as a part of that conversation, we came up with some ideas. Each of our groups were tasked with coming up with a creative way to address our teacher pipeline. And I ended up in a group that worked on an idea to develop basically an early college high school, but it's a PTEC program, which is a program to have students get an associate's degree while they're in high school and then move right into their the rest of their bachelor's program. And what we talked about was what's unique about PTEC is that there's a partnership typically with industry. In this case, the school district would be the partner, and we would collaborate with MCC on the development of teachers. So it would be a teaching and learning education associate's degree so that students would graduate from MCC and go right into the programs at Tech or Tarleton State University that are already at MCC. So it was a fantastic conversation. We talked about courses and how we might proceed with that. And then my staff, Donna McKethan and Robin Wilson and Dina Kornblum, wrote the planning grant for that. And that's what we received notification of today. And I'm really excited about that. I could even see that eventually being a small high school on the MCC campus where students have that connection to the high school staff, and then they're going right out to their college campuses. So that's something we're building towards, and I just wanted you all to know about it in case you heard about that in the near future. Thank you.
Nice work. Congrats.
Thank you.
And then we're going to bring Doug back in, and Doug's going to talk about sort of some options we've come up with for Waco High School. And then at the end of this, we're going to do an activity to sort of listen to what you've got on your minds.
All right, thanks, Casey. All right, so I'm going to try to go through these pretty briefly here, so we have as much time as we can to discuss. So we'll get to the end and just see if anyone has any questions here at the end. And so there's 4 options we're going to look at, and the first one here is maintaining systems. And so this would be that number, that Waco High School number that Casey mentioned before, to just address the building itself. And so that would be replacing mechanical systems, re-roofing the building, replacing doors or things like that that are broken or needing replacement. And so for the next 15 years, this option would address those items as needed, as they either as they fail or as they reach their end of useful life and need to be replaced. This option would not impact, as Casey mentioned, educational space. So it's not the Westwood option where we go in and renovate the whole space and provide bigger size classrooms or a different library. This would simply be just replacement of systems to keep the building functional. So Waco High School would stay as is. This would roughly take anywhere from about 13 to 15 years based on that facility conditions assessment and based on those numbers. And it would likely be several phases over the course of that time. And so that number there you see is about 70 to 80 million. So yeah, you can go to option 2 now, sorry. Option 2 here would be renovate. And so this would be much more similar to that Westwood example that we looked at. So this would include not just replacement and maintaining the systems, but it would be actually improving some of those systems, as well as providing appropriate educational spaces within the building. Likely for the campus of this size, somewhere between 5 and 6 phases. And again, that's definitely several years, 4 or more of construction timeline based on those phases. And you'll see there kind of towards the bottom on the left. And a renovation like this for a campus this size is anywhere from 125 to 155 million. And really that just depends on the scope and the intensity of some of the renovations, and if there's any facilities that may be kept versus being completely renovated or replaced. So again, this is more similar to that Westwood option. And then if we look at number 3, this would be a replacement. So this would be very similar to the Ann Richards option that we looked at. So you'll see there with the incorporation of the property east of the current Waco High School site, there would be space to construct a new facility, just like that previous example we saw. And so this would be not directly impacting the high school or not entirely impacting the existing high school during construction. So they would have that opportunity to stay in the building during construction while a new facility is constructed on the east side there. And we could look at, if there are facilities on campus, such as the auditorium or, maybe some of the other outbuildings that, are still valuable and maintainable, we could look at maintaining some of those as well. And this would be about the 3-year timeline of phase construction, and maybe a little longer if you include some of the demo that would happen of the existing building. And that's anywhere from 140 to 150 million dollars. And then option 4 was discussed briefly, but again, it's a bit of a challenge. This would be if there was a greenfield site in the area that would be served for Waco High School. It would be looking at about 80 acres to support the needs of the campus. And really the challenge there is there has not been that type of site found yet that is within the boundaries of where Waco High School would be needed to be located. So really when we look at this summary slide here, I think there's another one after this option 4. That option 4 really isn't feasible, but just wanted to kind of show the comparison of what that would be. And so again, really the three main being your baseline option of just maintaining the facility, the second option of renovate to improve the educational environment, and the third to replace on site. And so really quickly, before we move into the activity, I just wanted to make sure, does anyone have any questions just about the options themselves and what they incorporate?
This is Casey. I misspoke earlier. Someone had asked if site costs are included. I forgot that we removed them out of here so we could compare apples to apples here. And
Gotcha.
so
Thanks,
option 3 or option 4, what did we say? Option 4, not feasible. On the previous slide, did we list site costs?
No, not on the previous slide. I think the site costs in the beginning, it was just under the category.
So Waco option 4 says total project cost 150 million to 155 million. This would be for the building on a site. This does not include the site costs here. But then on the next slide, is everyone aware that the Lake Air Montessori, and not Lake Air Montessori, the Lake Air fields that are adjacent to the high school, we're considering there would be no cost associated with that. Is that correct, Dr. Kincannon?
That's correct.
Okay.
Are you ready to take questions?
Sure. Yeah.
This is Dr. Henry. I just would like to see those individual slides one more time.
Sure. Yeah, Jessica, if you want to flip back to 2 and we can kind of go through them. Or 1, sorry, thank you. So really, the difference, there's not really a difference graphically between 1 and 2. It's mainly the information on the left. So option 1 is maintaining the systems there. And that has a $70 to $80 million cost.
So I'm sorry. So when you say maintain the facility, you mean like don't improve it, or am I misunderstanding?
Correct. It would be addressing those facility conditions assessment items as they arise over the next 15 years. So it would not be improving the educational space.
Yeah, that means replacing the roof as it deteriorates. That means putting in new windows as needed. That does not include like new furnishing for the classrooms or operable partitions between spaces, all of that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
So then option 2 is would be doing those things. So would be renovating the entire campus. So this would be going in and totally gutting a space and providing a new library, or expanding the cafeteria, or redoing all of the locker rooms and things like that. That's what this option 2 would incorporate.
Okay.
But it would be within the existing facility. So it would not provide a new high school facility.
And that would be how many phases do you?
We're thinking probably somewhere around 5 phases of construction, and so at least I'd say 4 or more, if not 5 or 6 years of construction timeline in terms of those phases.
But Doug, this is one design process and one big project that just gets phased for construction over time in order to keep the kids on the campus, correct?
Right. So it wouldn't be that you'd have 5 different design, timelines and schedules. It would be, here's your project, and then, okay, here's what we can accomplish in phase 1. And that, takes into consideration where the students would be while that, first section of the school is shut down for construction. And then the next phase would kick on, and then those students would be able to move into the new part. And then you would kind of walk your way through the campus to replace and renovate those spaces over time.
In this phase, I'm sorry, this is Ilda Sabito. In this phase, is the square footage, is there any difference in that?
For planning purposes, no.
Okay.
Generally, we're considering it would just be renovations to the facility. Now, within this, 125 to 155 million kind of range, sure, we could look at, there would be some consideration, if there's any expansions needed, or anything like that.
Or Doug, could this budget accommodate something that might involve like a new addition, a small addition somewhere, or a new building for a certain purpose, and then demolition of another building?
Potentially, yeah, it could incorporate, some small replacement areas, or like I said, like maybe the locker room needs an expansion, or there needs to be an additional dance studio or an additional performing and fine arts rehearsal space or things like that. That could fall under this option. But generally it would be very specific and not, oh, we're going to replace the entire academic neighborhood with a new building. That would be more along the lines of the third option.
So question on the option 3, would that still only be 2 levels, or you talking about building up more, like maybe 3 stories? I mean, you can only see so much from a bird's eye view, so I didn't know.
Could you go
Can
to
you
the
move
next
forward
slide?
to option 3 on the slides? I think that's what his question.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we would look at that as we get into the design phase a little bit further. I'll say, just from a really quick high level planning standpoint, it is achievable with 2 stories. So there is room on site to do it in 2 stories. 3-story buildings tend to be a little bit more challenging when you get in. There's some code implications when you get to 3 stories, and structurally there's some more considerations as the building gets taller. And so that, it's certainly possible. But, typically we're seeing, 2 stories is pretty common. And there are lots of 3 stories out there. It just does sort of start to insert some challenges with code.
Okay.
So in the number 3, are you saying that the Waco High building, while maintaining the auditorium, that would be the only space that the school would occupy?
No, so it would be, the construction process would be, the existing high school, the entire high school as it is, would stay online and operational during construction of the new facility. So the new facility would basically be built and fenced off. So there would be a totally separate construction area.
No, I understand that. The question that I'm asking is, would the new building then constitute the high school? So what happens to the other older existent building? That's what I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, sorry. So at the end of construction, it would get demolished, and the other functions, the site components like the bus drop off, outdoor courtyard space, practice fields, things like that would fill in that area. So the new high school in option 3 would be the entire new high school, and the old facilities would be demolished.
So where it now says bus drop off, service access, that's where the old high school would have been.
Correct.
So my question is, are we creating additional space on the new site? I think that's the question that Mr. Stewart is also asking. It doesn't seem to be much bigger, would it be?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So with the 3-way agreement with the county as a part of the venue project, the school district is picking up that strip to the right where you see the new Waco High School campus from top to bottom, where it says parking all the way to the bottom, is about 12 acres. So the Waco High School campus size will be growing. With any option, it can grow because we've already signed that agreement.
And so what is that street? Is that Cobb that we're looking at?
Oh, I don't know what's the street in front of Waco High School? 42nd, and so it's between 42nd and New Road.
Oh, that's New Road that's out there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're saying that would take in, that's where the baseball fields are.
Correct. Those are the Little League fields.
And we get all of that.
And we get all of that, and then the board has already approved the new Paul Tyson field that you see in the top left-hand corner. And so it's moving over from the county's property over to the high school campus.
Okay. And that's where it says, so it would move from there to where it says the practice field?
No, it says Paul Tyson Field at the top. That's
Okay.
baseball and softball fields, and they're moving across the street. So we've just done.
Over to there. Okay, I got you.
We've done some swapping.
So in answer to my question, you're saying that yes, because we've been talking about making sure that we build for expansion so that we don't get to capacity in the next, 10 years after that. So you're saying that yes, we are it will be a bigger high school if we choose that option.
No, the size of the school is planned for 2150. We have the slides in earlier that shows our capacity, and so we have plenty of space. Space is our problem. It's the use of the spaces that we have and improving those spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
So the demographics slide that we went over last meeting and then again briefly this meeting show that total high school population for the next 10 plus years is going to be a maximum 4,100. But with making this campus this new size potentially of 2150 to match University High School, we'd still be providing 4,500 seats in the district. And so we're going way over even what the demographics are projecting as future. If that helps.
Okay, we're keep moving because we're almost to 8 and we have a group activity.
Yes. Great questions, and good conversation. So we do have an activity here. So it's a kind of a three-part activity here. And the very first thing is we're going to do I'll call it a blind poll of the options. And so everyone will have an opportunity to select an option, and it would be, what is the option that you prefer? And I'll ask if we just want to hold the results until everyone, don't display the results until people have gotten them in.
Yeah, maybe wait 30 seconds or a minute.
Yeah. And then we will break into small groups and just have that opportunity for everyone to discuss the options and just any thoughts that you have as far as Waco High School. And then we'll come back and there will be a designated person from each group that will do a very quick, call it, 30 to 60 second report on the group's discussion. And from there, we will poll again just to see kind of where everyone landed after the discussion. So, Casey, did I miss anything there?
No, you got it.
Hey, Doug. I was just going to add that the designated people in each of the breakouts are the O'Connell Robertson team members.
Oh, right. Thank you.
That are going to facilitate the discussion to make sure we have time to talk about all the topics. And then we're going to do the reporting out. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I forgot to mention that. So yes, we will be listening and taking notes, and then we will report back. So with that, I will ask Jessica or.
Yeah, I'll take care of it. I'll put everybody in just a moment. And just a heads up, these sessions are included in the video that is posted later. So not during the live stream, but when we post it later.
Great.
I believe we're all back from our breakout room.
All right. Sorry about that. Yes, it looks like we're all back. Hope everybody had some great engaging discussion. I know our group had a lot of great thoughts and comments. So I will go ahead and turn it over to, I don't know, do we know who the first group was by chance?
Casey, I can take that one.
Okay.
So my group, very quickly, option 3, the replacement on the campus, pretty much everyone had decided on that and the discussion. And the big reasons are grouped like option 3 is 1, it gets modern environments for not that much more than option 2. Option 2 was the renovations. We liked that it was not much more expensive and it was a little bit faster. And that was kind of nice, minimizing the disruptive to ongoing operations. Also, a lot of discussion about there's a community pride in new facility, both as a student attending the school, as a community member, as a parent. Seeing a new facility goes a long way in instilling pride. And then we drilled into it a little bit, and we had some side discussions. We're not sure if the PAC needs to be maintained. You know, the scheme showed to keep the PAC. There was concern that it's not necessarily equitable to University High School, if that was the goal. And it's flooded over the years. It is 20 years old, and so it's not new. And so we did discuss a little bit about, is that worth maintaining potentially? So overall, option 3 for group 1.
All right. And Casey, do you remember if these were numbered groups or?
I saw mine come up as group 1.
Okay, unfortunately.
So
I
you
missed
know
my
the
number,
5
so.
design team members. So perhaps you want to go to like maybe Amy next.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I can just kind of call on y'all.
Yeah, it's Amy is 2, room 3 is Doug, room 4 is Jessica.
Okay, I can go next. So our group was great. And when we talked about option number 1 in maintaining systems, they gave it a big thumbs down. So they did not even really want to talk about that. Felt like it had no educational benefit and was like a Band-Aid that continues to be a problem. So we had quite a bit of discussion about option number 2 and option number 3. On option number 2, some of the questions were really about how are programs like educational programs on the campus and academics impacted. There was some concern about that. And, you know, we talked about the close coordination that was required, communication with the staff in the phasing plan, but that yes, you know, programs would be impacted as they might have to move into a portable for a semester or for a year, and that could, you know, be somewhat disruptive. The question was asked if all phased renovations are as complicated as the Westwood example we showed, and Westwood High School was complicated because of the small site. So a larger site helps with that. But yes, they're complex projects to renovate spaces and shift classes and programs around. There was also a question in our group that appears in the chat that feels like cost presented in our option summaries doesn't seem realistic. It seems like a phased renovation over multi-years would be quite a bit more than a new building on that site was the perspective. So there was a little bit of a question about that. So that really led us to talk about option 3, which was replacing Waco High School on the existing site. And that was very much the preferred option. With land available, they like the opportunity to build new and build more appropriate educational spaces. You know, we had high school staff, former staff on the group we were in, and they feel like we've tried that renovation thing and it just hasn't resulted in what we needed. Really like the idea of a replacement for more adequate and suitable educational spaces for today's learning. Also wanted to note, Casey, that they felt the PAC on that campus definitely needs renovation as well. A few people felt they could use a little more detailed information and asked about the facility assessment report. And I would say that pretty much summed it up.
Great. I think group 3 was me. And again, also very, very great conversation and some very good parallels, I think, with the first 2 groups. You know, one of the first things that we discussed was that, you know, since it did appear, you know, those renovation numbers and the new construction were so similar, it just makes more sense with a new facility. There was some discussion about, you know, what the challenges are when you do a phased renovation like option 2. You know, the noise disruption alone, just with that type of work on education. There was Also, a little bit of conversation about capacity and just making sure that in the planning process, if a new facility is constructed, that we're, potentially considering, what happens if, as people do start to come back and they see this great new facility, is that going to exceed the capacity project or the demographic projections? Tennis did come up, and just knowing, that it does need some significant improvements, but also discuss just in general all those supporting extracurricular and athletics spaces. One thing that we did talk about as well was the new building entrance and the opportunity that a new facility would give for enhancing the curb appeal of the building and the site that would not be as achievable in option 2. And then also, as the first and second groups mentioned, the Performing Arts Center came up as well. Not necessarily a keeper. It's at the very least, potentially needing some significant renovations, or would potentially be benefited from being replaced. So I think a lot of good similarities there, and I'll turn it over to group 4.
That was me. And to keep with theme, best option that everyone felt for our group was definitely to replace the high school. Maintaining the systems to them, to a lot of people said was just a waste of the $80 million, and just basically we need to do better. Renovating the high school didn't seem the first option. Of course, money is a factor in budget, and what we, if it goes out for bond and we get that passed, what's approved for. So it would kind of almost be a contingency plan. But I felt that this option, renovating, would be more difficult on the students and the teachers. And, if, people expressed, if we're going to renovate, how substantially different is it from option 1 and option, than this option. So, and other kind of concern with this one is that it just sounds a little bit chaotic overall, and just worry about limiting what can actually be achieved, and not ending up with what is truly wanted. So that kind of transitioned more into replacing the high school. That this is definitely the preference, instead of piecemealing the structure, so to speak, and just liking the idea of the new space. I will say, one of the things we talked about, as far as having that new front entrance for the school. One of the concerns for that, though, would be that it's facing a very busy road, that new road school. So that was one general concern talked about with replacing that high school. But really, they would prefer to go for the big goal, which is the replacement. One other interesting, different thing to report is just kind of, we talked about it. Are there any other options aside from the ones that we've laid out, that, is there something else we're not considering? So, one thing discussed was by configuring the district differently, is there a way to kind of get that greenfield tract? And we talked about how that kind of has been, but, addressed a little, but is there a way of redoing some of those boundaries that we could get that? And is there a piece of land that we have not thought about to kind of consider as well? So overall, general consensus here that option 3 is the best for our group.
Okay, I believe this is Jenna, and I believe that I had the last group, group number 5. And like many of the comments that were made in the other groups, very similar. Option 3, the replacement school, is the most attractive and desired. We did talk about some things. The word align came up a lot, to align the way that they want to teach at Waco ISD with their spaces. So the spaces to accommodate the way that they want to teach in moving forward and the instructional settings, and to have that element of pride as well. Majority of the team felt that this was a best use of funds. There was some conversation about option number 2, and what are some, what can we do to hold on to existing spaces and build new buildings, and kind of incorporate the two together to consider. So we talked a little bit about that. And then one of the interesting comments that was made was, what if we can't afford this Cadillac? So this was a discussion that we had as well about how we are dreaming big right now, and then we'll also look at numbers as we move forward. So it was a very good discussion, and I appreciate all the input that we got from our group. Thank you.
Great. Thanks everybody for your input. And Josh, I think we want to go to that poll slide so that we can give everybody an option to really show their preferences here. So I think you all have participated before in the polling process. So you're going to either use your phone to text, or you can log in at pollev.com. So the instructions are on the screen. And then we'd like you to choose your favorite option, knowing that you don't have all the information available, but you have received a lot. So this is just where you're at tonight, your preference for how to respond to Waco High School. And we'll give everybody a few minutes to cast their votes. Has this been activated, Jessica? There we go.
Yep.
Well, that does mirror what some of the feedback was.
We're pretty clear here. Yeah.
So that's great. I don't know if we want to give it another 30 seconds. Nope, we'll move on. So we
did
past
this,
that one.
and we don't need to poll again. It was the same poll. The original intent was to poll before and then after. Yep, and now we're done. Before we go to the next meeting, I just wanted to jump in. Our group was, oh, what are we going to do about middle schools and elementary schools, etc. Don't worry, we've got upcoming meetings. Next meeting, we're going to get into middle schools a little bit. So we'll be repeating this similar type of activity in the future for other campuses in the district.
And the other thing that I wanted to add, there were several questions in our group about just, different elements of a high school campus and design and which parts would be renovated and which wouldn't. And I just want to, reiterate to the whole group that there has not been any design decisions made. Design of any new facilities has not been happening with regard to the things we're still talking about, because the district doesn't, is looking for your input on how to go forward before that sort of thing happens. So I think that's it for tonight. Dr. Kincannon, did you have any parting comments before we adjourn until the next meeting?
No, I just want to say thank you. Looks like we have really clear direction on high school, and that feels really good. And I will let our board president end the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. It was a great meeting, great discussion. Looking forward to middle school next time. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Al.
March 22nd.